Hi, this is Anthony. Welcome back to Testive Advisor.
This is Ben. I'm excited for our lesson today. We're going to be talking about the reading section of the test. I think that we have some great strategies in store for you for approaching the reading section as a whole. We've also got some nice questions that we're going to dig into that are going to give you information about the different types of questions you'll see on the test. I hope that you've been having a good time keeping up with your daily practice and your problems of the week. If you find that you need an extra push, some more motivation for getting those done, or that you need a little bit more customization in understanding how to tackle the test, consider an upgrade to Testive coaching. Let's get started. Today we're going to be talking about the reading section of the test. Now, your daily Testive practice is designed to help you build and reinforce the skills that you need to effectively attack the various types of questions that you're going to see on the exam. Now, as you know, because you started off with one, full-length practice tests are another crucial piece of your test preparation program. So we're going to get into detail about how to answer specific types of questions that you'll see later in this video. But we're going to start off with some strategies for efficiently managing your time and energy as you make your way through the reading section of the test. So let's talk about reading with efficiency. Now, one approach that you could use, it might be your most instinctual approach when you see a reading passage, is to read the passage through carefully from start to finish. You might even take notes or annotate the passage. This is probably what you've been taught to do in your English classes. It's a great instinct for critical reading in general. Now, it's a great approach for English class, but it's not so much a great approach for a timed test because you only have a certain amount of time per question. So the more time that you spend reading information in the passage that ends up not being important information or critical information for the questions you need to answer, the less time you have to apply to the task at hand. Okay, so maybe you swing the other way when you realize that you are running out of time by reading every word. Maybe you go all the way to the other direction. You may have had friends advise you on this approach. Skip the passage. Head straight to the questions. Don't even look at the passage because the questions are going to tell you what you need to know. They're going to say, go to line 43 and figure out the meaning of a word. They're going to say, what's the purpose of paragraph 2? So why not skip the passage altogether? Saves you a bunch of time. Go straight to the questions and then just use those to guide you what to do. Well, it saves you time up front, but the downsides of that approach are going to catch up to you because you'll find, some portion of the questions for each passage where you can answer them without having any sense of the passage as a whole. But then there's going to be questions about whole paragraphs. There are going to be questions about author's purpose, about the main idea of the whole passage. And you're going to end up going back and forth to that passage so many times, rereading so many sections that we find students who take this approach end up actually losing more time than if they just read the passage straight through to begin with. So this approach is so haphazard that it ends up losing you time rather than saving it in the long run. So we're going to advocate for you to attempt to strike a happy medium in how you approach the reading passage on the test. We'll look at a couple of different approaches that help you adapt to the test. And if you get good enough at these approaches to attacking a whole passage, you can really think about it as making the test adapt to you.
So now I'm going to discuss an alternative strategy to the one that Ben just showed you. First, you're going to begin by very quickly, now this shouldn't take more than a minute, reading the question stems and finding those that reference specific places in the passage, that is, a certain paragraph or specific line numbers, and then you want to quickly go to those places in the passage and mark them in some way, whether that means underlining them or making a line down the side of the passage in the margins, anything that's going to make this part stand out to you. Then, when you're reading the passage, and you get to one of these parts you've underlined. Let's say it's the word popular in line 30. You're going to then stop, head over to that question that refers to that word, and you're going to answer that question right there. Sometimes it might take a line or two above and below this word so you can get the full context, but this way, the question is going to be super fresh in your mind, and more importantly, the part in the passage that this question is referring to is going to be fresh in your mind, and you're going to be able to answer this question efficiently without having to do any rereading, and that's where you can lose a lot of time hunting and rereading. So once you've finished the passage and you've taken out a good chunk of these questions now through this strategy, you want to answer the remaining questions that refer more generally to the passage, such as a question that asks about the main idea. And now this strategy is able to be used on its own or combined with Ben's advice. You're going to have to experiment on your own and formulate your own plan of attack using a mishmash of the two.
The first example we're going to look at is a main idea question. You can tell main idea questions because of the wording of the question itself. It usually includes the term main idea in the question. And what you want to do for these, the most effective way to answer this sort of question in the ACT reading test is to take a close look at the topic sentences of the entire passage. Now, the topic sentences are going to be the first sentence of each of the paragraphs after the introductory paragraph. I've included the introductory paragraph here, and this ... here to imply that the rest of the passage is missing, but I'm also including the last paragraph here. This is the one topic sentence that's going to actually be useful, the most useful for us answering this question. But you want to read all of them, really try to understand what they're saying. Let's go ahead and do that with this sentence here. At least that is what today's marine biologists and naturalists tell us, although adult eels have never been seen swimming, reproducing, or dying in the Sargasso. What this means is we don't have direct observation of the eels living out important stages of their lives. So as we'll see, this is going to be very important for answering this question. Let's go ahead and consider all the answer choices. Researchers have nearly exhausted their resources after spending decades investigating the Sargasso Sea. We see no mention of the resources being nearly exhausted. That is, that they're almost completely used up in the passage. So we can get rid of this answer choice right away. Significant gaps still remain in researchers' understanding of the life cycle of eels. Well, we could infer that significant gaps still remain if we haven't even observed the eels living out important parts of their lives just yet. We haven't seen them at all. So, of course, there may be a lot of things that we don't really understand about the life cycle of the eel. So this looks like a good answer. Let's go ahead and check out the other two. Eels live their entire lives in the Sargasso Sea, but no one has ever seen them there. Now, this would be okay, except for the fact that it says entire lives in the Sargasso Sea. And we see evidence earlier in the passage of the eels being elsewhere as well. You see that some of the eels go up all the rivers of eastern North America and the Caribbean countries, in all the rivers of eastern and western Europe, but they all come from the Sargasso Sea. So they don't live their entire lives in the Sargasso Sea, but travel all the way through Europe, the Caribbean, and North America. So that crosses out, or that makes this answer choice incorrect. And then we've got our last answer choice here. Female eels turn into silver eels toward the end of their lives. Once again, no direct evidence of this anywhere in the passage. So answer choice B is our best answer. What you want to do, one more time, is take a look at the topic sentences. There will usually be one that will correspond to one of the answer choices for main idea questions.
The first thing you want to do is read the question and do not look at the answer choices. I'll get back to why you shouldn't do that later on. Think back to the general organization of the passage from when you first read or skimmed it. Do you remember where the Sargasso Sea was first discussed? If not, what might be a logical place for this to appear in the passage? You want to eventually get to this first paragraph where the sea is first introduced. And if you look, it's going to say that The sea is about 2,000 miles long and 1,000 miles wide, set off from the surrounding waters of the Atlantic by strong currents. It includes the area known in popular legend as the Bermuda Triangle. So, going back to our question, it's asking what it is set off from. And if we look at this part of the passage, we get that same phrase repeating. And if we look just after this phrase set off, we see that it is set off by strong currents. So now we have a good idea of what the answer choice might be. Let's see if any of the answer choices on the left match what we've just found. This way, we don't get confused by any of the answer choices before we've actually researched the question in the passage itself. And so it says nothing about it being set off from the Azores, several Caribbean countries, powerful winds. And the only thing that it talks about is these strong currents. So we know that that's going to be the correct answer. This question is asking about the passage overall. You can tell this from a few things. The according to the passage and the fact that it's asking for the best evidence in the entire passage. For these reasons, it is a good idea to look at the introduction and conclusion in such cases, because these tend to deal most with the passage as a whole. I have here the conclusion of the passage, and this is where we're going to find our answer. So reread the last paragraph with this question in mind. And if you do that, you'll see that these eel larvae that we're interested in appear right here. So we're going to be looking at lines 73 to 78. And in particular, this sentence right here, or these two sentences rather. And looking at these sentences, we see that since small larvae were only found in that area, they must have been recently born not far away. And for this reason, the size of the larvae is going to be the most important factor and the best evidence for why they were hatched in the Sargasso Sea. So we're going to go ahead and choose size as our final answer. Nothing is mentioned in the passage about the shape, color, or species of these eel larvae. Eel larvae still belong to the species of eel. They're just a younger form. So this question is dealing with the meaning of the word popular in line 12. Any question that is asking for the meaning of a word in a line is going to give you the number, and this makes things easier because you don't have to search in the passage. You know exactly where to go. So it's often useful to read the sentence immediately before or after the sentence that includes the word indicated. Since this is the last sentence in the passage, the last sentence in the paragraph, it's really not going to be too helpful to read the sentence immediately after, so let's just read the sentence immediately before, and that's it. So, the sea is about 2,000 miles long and 1,000 miles wide, set off from the surrounding waters of the Atlantic by strong currents. It includes the area known in popular legend as the Bermuda Triangle. Popular here is the word that we're looking to find the meaning of. And the thing to keep in mind is that the ACT is never going to be asking for the dictionary definition of the word. It is asking for a meaning based on a specific context. Often you can rule out the way that you would normally define the word. Here, for example, we can say that well-liked is probably not going to be the correct answer. So then what you want to do is rule out the other answer choices by plugging them in. So if we plug in scientifically accepted, we'll see it includes the area known in scientifically accepted legend as the Bermuda Triangle. Now, it doesn't seem like the Bermuda Triangle would be something backed up by science. There's no mention of science in reference to this legend. Legends usually aren't something associated with science in general, although the rest of the passage does deal with science, so don't let that trip you up. Make sure you're paying attention to the context of the specific sentence. So let's rule this one out, because legends usually aren't scientific. And then let's move on to this most admired. There's nothing here to indicate that most admired is applicable in any way to legend. It doesn't give you any opinion on this legend in the passage. It just tells you that the legend is responsible for the name right here, Bermuda Triangle. So we're going to cross that out as well. And then we're left with commonly known. So think about why we're given this sentence. We're given this sentence so we can get a name for this area. And this is the name that the area usually goes by. And that is why we're being given it. It's just the most common way of identifying the area. And that's why we want to choose commonly known. So popular here means known by a lot of people. The legend's so known by people that this is the name most used for this area. That's all we have for today. Thanks for tuning in.
Happy prepping.